With that, let's move to other parts of the presentation. But that idea about the team agreement, don't lose track of it, okay? Moving to the next slide, is that watch some of the things that you have been saying actually now appear here when virtual team leaders say, how do we build this virtual workplace where it really is people working together in a continuous, ongoing manner. So one virtual team leader from some research will talk about his first priority, or their first priority, was to build the working relationships themselves. So this is going to begin now to, shift and move. Okay, so managers, are they focusing just on the task, or do they have to actually focus on the relationships first? So his first priority was, to build the kinds of working relationships where team members will freely share knowledge. Because keep in mind, the whole idea around today's organization really is about knowledge work. It's about people interacting, not just sharing information, but sharing knowledge in a creative way where things can get done and where new ideas can be brought forth so that creative solutions, not just problem solving, but creative solutions can be built and applied. Build the relationship so you can leverage members' collective expertise, a critical element, so that the relationships, they can anticipate each other's actions and feel confident. Feel confident all team members are making a full-fledged contribution to the team's success. Okay, so it focuses on then that managers have to not just be concerned about the tasks that to be done, but first have to build the relationships so that the tasks can be done in an innovative way. And you'll see too that a manager's role within the distributed work environment is really facilitating, enabling everyone to make the contributions needed. But again, when we're talking about trust, we have to get to know each other. When we're also looking at leveraging collective expertise, the group has to get to know each other so they can anticipate each other's actions. When you look at high-performance teams, one of the big elements there is that they get to know each other as well, so they know where each other is coming from, and they feel confident. All right. Another virtual team leader will talk about something, Queasy, that you brought up as well, which is when leading virtually, not only to be clear and concise in communication, but also communicate a passion for the assignment and a caring for the people. So in other words, when you were talking about that, does everybody believe in what we're doing? And I'm working with the individuals, I'm working on this team. Am I cared about? All right. Am I actually understood and valued and understood as a person that has limits? I think you can see the things that you're experiencing and the things that you're suggesting are critical. Now, let's take a look a little bit more at the distributed workplace, but then keep in mind that, okay, then how do we do this? Is that this is a challenge because we're used to working and we're much more familiar working where we can readily speak to somebody, readily go down maybe to their office or quickly talk, call them up on the phone. But what happens now when we're in a distributed environment, we have work pressures are up. So relationship building has a tendency to be pushed to the back as we're focusing on the task. We have time zones to deal with. We have cultural issues. All right. So with that said, let's look at the distributed workplace. And for me, leading in a non-collaborative manner challenges us actually to re-image, not just to restructure, not just to find new practices, but to literally re-image the workplace and what it now means to be a manager. So for me, it calls for the development of new models and new practices. One that I want to put forward, thinking and working and experiencing and observing virtual team members, managers, is to really see that the organizational network itself with its physical and virtual dimensions. In other words, today's organization really has both. It's not just a location. That's not the organization. The organization is the network itself, and it has physical dimensions to it. It has virtual dimensions, and that is the workplace. Very much like what we're doing here on this webinar right now is that can you begin to envision that we're all in the same place? That really this connection that is made via the technology is the training session, and that we literally are not separate, but we're really together because we have a virtual workplace to meet. So really, for me, I want begin to think about what if we began to imagine the workplace as the network, or the network as the workplace. And that then managers, in light of what you've been saying and others as well, that managers, we oftentimes think of focus on the operations, on the tasks, on the processes to get things done. So immediately, here's the project, here's the timeline, here's what we have to get done, let's go do it. As that managers actually re-envision themselves, to see themselves as actually engaging leaders who actually network people. That their first task is to network people, not just nodes on the system, but actually network people that enables them to develop collaborative operational processes. So that before we can actually even do the task, we have to recognize the people, which brings us then to this idea about, well, what if we have a bold new managerial mindset then, a new mental model? Organizations are ever-evolving networks that form and end as needed. There's a self-organizing concept to them, and today there needs to be a much more sense of agility, adaptiveness. That the enterprise is a system of ongoing relationships and conversations that enable innovation. So really, the whole idea about the task comes a little bit later in the process. We've already talked about that the network is the workplace, and it's actually a 24/7 meeting place. And there's a variety of ways that we can meet there. So again, begin to reframe. Telepresence, like what we're in now, is really human presence, and that's a very challenging leap for us. And that really it's people plus the technology as a system equals what the workforce is, that if we take either of those out. Now today we can't get real in-depth in all of these, but I want to focus really on today, the idea about the enterprise being a system of conversations and relationships, and that we are in a workplace where we meet. And with that then, what does that mean then for the manager? All right. So in looking at this, and everyone saying that, well, we're in this type of distributed work environment, and that relationships are critical, but we don't have the collegiality, we don't have the trust. A manager needs then to start with, well, leading by focusing on networking talented people and not merely completing tasks and meeting timelines. Leadership by focusing on building that network, that very human network of these extremely talented individuals, getting their buy-in, getting the relationships established, getting the camaraderie going, getting the communication systems that work for the individuals as well as the task or the project that they're working on. Establishing a workplace culture that focuses continuously on meaningful connections and routine interactions. This one I think is critical. Even in some of your comments earlier, you brought this up, is that you can't just say, okay, we're going to meet once a week, or we're going to meet every 2 weeks, or we're going to, there has to be that idea of social capital, that idea of how do we stay connected, how do we bump into each other, and on a continuous basis. We'll come back to that a little bit later, so keep that one in mind. Enabling those in the network to self-organize, or to organize but self-organize as needed, and to develop the communication systems that they need and to communicate as needed, collaborate as well as needed, and to strategically utilize the technology to do that, to really thinking through and not just say, well, this is what I'm given by the company, or this is the hottest, latest thing, or this is what I'm used to doing. Is that the technology and the individuals in the process, in the network, that the project itself all has to line up. Okay, that, it has to enable the type of engagement that is needed to build the human relationships to get the job done. And then, of course, unleashing their creativity and innovative solution building. So a bit of a framework of seeing, okay, so what is today's manager in a distributed work environment? So let's just stop again for a moment, for a brief moment. So as a manager, how do you think? How do you think that you build employee work relationships? What is one or two things that you might do or you do that actually does this? And how do you think you can do it better?